I found a German Shepherd puppy shaking on the frozen sidewalk as if his life meant nothing. It was broad daylight in Chicago, below zero, and yet nobody stopped. Curled against the wall, his tiny body trembled so violently I could hear his teeth clattering. One paw twisted awkwardly, his eyes raw from crying, and still when I stepped closer, he lifted his head as if to beg, "Please, don't leave me too." I froze, not because of the cold, though it bit through my coat. It was something else. That look, that unbearable, silent plea. His ribs pressed sharp against his skin, his fur matted with road salt and something darker. I swear I could see frost clinging to his eyelashes. He wasn't just cold, he was losing his fight. People passed by with coffee cups in hand, parkas, shopping bags, Bluetooth calls, too busy for a second glance. A couple even stepped around him without pausing. One man muttered, "Just a stray," like that explained everything. Like that made it okay. I stood there unsure what to do. I wasn't a rescuer. I wasn't trained for this. I was just a 42-year-old guy named Michael Delaney, walking back from the corner store with bread and eggs, but something inside me cracked wide open. The puppy didn't move when I crouched. He didn't bark, didn't growl, he just stared. His breath came in ragged little clouds. I could see the pain in the way he held his leg off the ground, paw curled inward like it didn't belong to him anymore. Someone or something had hurt him and left him, like garbage. I took off my scarf and slowly laid it near him. He flinched, barely, but didn't run. I tried not to cry, I really did, but I felt my throat tighten as I watched this tiny creature, too broken to even hope. This German Shepherd puppy was maybe 4 or 5 months old, still had those big, clumsy paws, still had the face of someone who wanted to trust, who remembered love even if just barely. A gust of wind blew sharp through the alley, lifting bits of paper and grit, and he whimpered. His body curled tighter. My hands itched to grab him, to scoop him up and run, but I didn't, not yet. He wasn't ready. And honestly, neither was I. So I sat down on the icy sidewalk a few feet away and just waited. He didn't take his eyes off me, not for a second. Every tiny movement I made sent a shiver through his fragile body, as if he was bracing for something terrible. I'd seen fear before, but never like this. This wasn't just fear of pain. This was fear of people, the kind that takes root deep and stays. I kept my distance, speaking low, just enough to let him hear my voice. "Hey, buddy, it's okay now. You're not alone." His ears twitched, barely. That was something. Maybe he still understood kindness. The cold was unforgiving. I shifted on the concrete, feeling it seep through my jeans and into my bones. But I wasn't going anywhere. I had nowhere more important to be than right there, beside him. A German Shepherd puppy, tossed aside like trash, trying to survive in a world that didn't seem to care. I noticed now that his tail was tucked so tight between his legs it nearly disappeared. The pads of his paws were cracked, raw. There was dried blood near his claws. He'd tried to move, maybe crawl somewhere safe, but hadn't made it far. I wanted to scream at someone, anyone, at the city, at the people who passed him by, at whoever did this to him. How do you leave a baby like this in the snow? How do you look into those eyes and walk away? "Leif," I said out loud, surprising myself. "You look like a leaf." I don't know why the name came to me. Maybe because it meant something about life, about surviving. Maybe because he looked like he was holding onto it by a thread, and somehow he didn't flinch at the name. His eyes stayed on me, studying, waiting. A kid on a scooter rolled past us, music blaring from his phone. The puppy flinched so hard he nearly collapsed on his side. I felt something inside me twist. I took a risk. I slid my hand slowly across the ground, inch by inch, fingers spread, palm open. "I won't hurt you, Leif, I swear." He didn't move, but he didn't pull away either. He just stared at my hand like it was something foreign, dangerous, and yet his nose twitched. He was thinking, deciding. That's when I saw it, just for a second. A shift in his eyes. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. A tiny flicker that said, maybe. Maybe not everyone is cruel. I stayed there, frozen to the sidewalk, hand outstretched, heartbeat thudding like a drum in my ears, hoping he'd take that first step, or at least let me try. Leif started shaking again. Worse this time, violent, rhythmic tremors that made his whole body jerk against the pavement. And then I heard it. His teeth. That tiny clack, clack, clack that cut through the street noise and went straight to my chest. God, he was freezing. I could feel the panic rising in me, like I was already too late, like I'd waited too long. This couldn't go on. Not another minute. I had to move. "I'm sorry, little guy," I whispered, sliding in closer. "I have to pick you up now. I know it'll hurt, but I need to get you out of this." He whimpered when I touched him, just a soft, broken sound that shattered me. His tiny frame tensed up in my arms, back legs twitching, front paw limp, but I held him close, careful and steady. And then something happened, something I'll never forget. He pressed into me. Not a struggle, not a squirm, just pressure. His head sank into the crook of my elbow, and I felt the tip of his nose nuzzle into my hand. I didn't know if it was me he was clinging to, or just the warmth, but it didn't matter. He stayed there. I stood up slowly, shielding him from the wind with my coat. For a second, I instinctively turned toward my apartment, just a few blocks away. But no, I couldn't take chances. I needed to know if he was really okay, if that leg was broken, if he had internal damage, if he could even survive the night. Still cradling him, I fumbled my phone out of my pocket with one hand, fingers stiff from the cold. The screen barely responded to my touch, but I managed to pull up Google Maps. Vet near me. There, just 10 minutes away on foot. A local clinic I'd passed a dozen times and never thought twice about. I adjusted Leif in my arms, tucked my scarf tighter around him, and started walking. Every step, I talked to him. Quiet, soft, anything to keep him calm. "Hang in there, buddy, just a few more blocks. You're doing so good. We're gonna get you help, okay?" He didn't respond, not really, but he didn't try to pull away either. His breath was shallow and warm against my chest. I could feel his heartbeat, rushed, panicked, but there, still fighting. We turned the corner and I saw the sign ahead. 10 minutes never felt so long in my life. His little heart was pounding so fast I could feel it through my jacket, like a tiny drum, wild and desperate, thumping against my chest. It made my own heart race just to match it. This wasn't just fear, it was survival. Pure, instinctual terror. And I knew, deep down, if I didn't get him inside soon, he might not make it. "Don't you dare give up on me now, little one," I whispered as I pushed the clinic door open with my shoulder. A gust of warm air hit us, and Leif stirred in my arms, barely. The receptionist looked up from her computer, eyes widening when she saw what I was holding. "We'll take him right now," she said without hesitation. "No questions, no paperwork, just action." I followed her into a back room, where a vet in scrubs motioned me to lay him on the table. Leif whimpered the moment he touched the cold steel, curling his injured paw up tight. I stayed right there beside him, hand on his back, whispering nonsense just to keep us both grounded. The vet moved gently, examining him with practiced hands. "He's got a bad contusion on the front leg," she said, lifting it slightly. "Painful, but no fractures, and he's severely hypothermic. His temperature is way below normal." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "But he'll be okay, right?" She nodded. "With care. Warmth, fluids. He got lucky. Another hour out there, maybe less." Her voice trailed off. Lucky. That word didn't sit right. Nothing about what he'd been through felt like luck. But maybe today, maybe now, was the start of something different. As the vet placed a heated blanket over him and started the IV, Leif turned his head. Those same eyes, deep, wet, wounded, met mine again. And this time they didn't just plead. They held on. They locked in like he was searching me for something I didn't even know I had. "Don't leave," they said without sound. I stepped closer and gently laid my hand on his paw. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered. "You're coming home with me." His eyes closed slowly. Not in fear this time, but maybe in trust. An hour later, the vet came out with a soft smile and tired eyes. "He's stable," she said. "We'll keep him here until evening to monitor, make sure his vitals hold. After that, we'll transfer him to the shelter." The word hit harder than I expected. Shelter. I nodded slowly, like that made sense. Like that was the right thing. But something twisted inside me. This German Shepherd puppy had been left to die on a sidewalk, shaking and broken, and now he'd be dropped into a kennel with other forgotten souls, just another file in a system. I stepped outside into the hallway and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered for a second, then I called home. My wife picked up on the second ring. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. "Yeah, I hesitated. I found a puppy. Hurt, freezing. I'm still at the vet. They want to send him to a shelter tonight." There was a pause. Then, "Do what you think is right. We trust you." I felt my chest tighten, not with stress, just emotion, support. I looked through the clinic window, saw Leif lying under a warming blanket, IV taped to his leg. His eyes were closed, but his ears twitched when a nurse passed by, still alert, still listening, still unsure of what tomorrow would bring. I couldn't leave him. I just couldn't. Not after everything. I sat in the waiting room, elbows on my knees, and let the memories wash over me, his curled body on the sidewalk, the way his teeth chattered, those silent tears frozen on his face. God, I could still see them. He's so small, so helpless. And all I could think was, he needs a home, not a cage, not another cold place with metal walls and strange smells and no one to whisper his name. But then again, maybe the shelter could give him better care, structure, safety. They were professionals after all. They'd know what to do. Maybe he'd have a better chance there. Maybe that was what love looked like, letting go. Or maybe love looked like staying. I leaned back, staring up at the ceiling tiles, my eyes stinging. The room was warm, but I couldn't stop shivering. By the time the sun began to dip behind the buildings, I was still there, still waiting, still watching the hallway as if someone might come tell me I was needed again, as if Leif might call for me and only me. When they let me in to see him, my breath caught. He looked even smaller than before, wrapped in layers of blankets on the metal table, IV still in place. His fur was still damp in places, and his poor twisted paw, was bandaged gently. But it was his eyes that undid me all over again. He opened them when I walked in, slowly, and he looked right at me. No fear this time, no confusion, just something quiet, something broken and waiting to be mended. I walked closer, knelt beside the table, and rested my hand near his face. He pressed his nose to my palm without hesitation. This German Shepherd puppy, once abandoned and freezing on a sidewalk in Chicago, was choosing me. Again. The nurse behind me spoke softly. We'll get him to the shelter tonight. They'll keep him warm, start looking for placement. Placement, like he was furniture. I shook my head slowly. My voice cracked as I said, "Can I stay with him? Just for now." She nodded, left us alone. I sat in that room for an hour, maybe even breathe, watching his chest rise and fall, whispering his name, Leif, again and again, like maybe if I said it enough, he'd understand he mattered, that someone finally saw him. I don't know when it happened, but tears started rolling down my cheeks. I didn't even feel them at first. Just this weight in my chest, this ache that wouldn't ease. All I could see was that sidewalk. His tiny body curled against the concrete, his eyes pleading, the sound of his teeth chattering like a cry for help the world ignored. And all I could think was, he's just a puppy. A German Shepherd puppy. He didn't deserve this. He didn't ask to be born into a world that would throw him away. He didn't ask to freeze alone while people stepped over him. And now, after surviving all of that, we were talking about sending him to another place full of cages and strangers. I wiped my face with my sleeve. My voice cracked as I whispered, "I'm sorry it took so long. I should have seen you sooner. I should have done something sooner." He stirred, just a little, nudged my hand again, and that was it. That was all it took. The moment I knew, I wasn't letting go. Not tonight, not ever. The next words I spoke felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I'm taking him home." The vet gave a small nod, almost like she'd been waiting for me to say it. "We'll prep some basic supplies for the night. Just keep him warm, monitor him closely. He'll need follow-ups in the next few days." I signed the temporary foster paperwork with hands that were still trembling, but not from doubt. This wasn't hesitation. This was adrenaline, relief, something close to hope. Leif was bundled gently into a soft fleece blanket, the kind that smelled like antiseptic and safety. I tucked him into my arms like he was made of glass. And maybe he was, in a way. So fragile, so new to the idea that people might actually mean comfort. Outside, the cold bit at my skin, but I didn't care. I held him close as we stepped into the backseat of the car. He didn't cry. He didn't panic. He just curled against me, eyes fluttering shut as we drove through the quiet streets of Chicago. When we pulled into the driveway, porch lights were already glowing warm against the snow. My wife opened the door before I even knocked. She must have been watching from the window. Her face softened the moment she saw him. "Michael," she whispered. "He's so small." Our 8-year-old son, Jacob, peeked out from behind her. He stepped forward cautiously, eyes wide, clutching the edge of his pajama sleeve. "That's the puppy?" "His name is Leif," I said, kneeling to let them see. "He's been through a lot, so we have to be gentle, kind." Jacob nodded like I'd just given him the most serious mission of his life. "I can do that," he whispered. Then, softer, "Hi, Leif." Leif didn't flinch. He didn't cower. He blinked slowly, his head still resting against my chest, and let out the faintest sigh, almost like he knew he was finally safe. We brought him inside, set him gently on a soft blanket near the fireplace. My wife brought out a Starbucks paper cup with warm broth she'd prepared, and the smell made Leif lift his nose, just a little. It wasn't much, but he licked it. A first taste of warmth that wasn't just survival, it was care. We sat around him on the floor, no one saying much, just watching him, breathing with him, letting the room fill with something we hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. He was home. That first night was quiet, until it wasn't. We set up a little bed for Leif near the foot of ours, lined with towels and soft blankets. Jacob had brought one of his old stuffed animals and placed it gently beside him, whispering, "He won't be scared if he has a friend." I didn't have the heart to tell him it might not help. At first, Leif slept. Hard. His breathing shallow but steady, wrapped up like a little bundle of fur and bandages. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like an hour, just watching his chest rise and fall. My wife eventually tugged at my sleeve. "Come to bed, Michael," she said softly. "He's okay now." But around 2 a.m, I heard it. A whimper. Then a low, cracked cry. Not loud, but enough to slice straight through the dark. I sat up instantly. Leif was thrashing in his sleep. Not violently. Just twitching. Legs jerking, head turning from side to side. His eyes were closed, but his face was twisted with something I knew too well. Fear. Panic. He whimpered again, then let out a soft, broken yelp, like something was chasing him in his dreams, something he couldn't outrun. I was next to him in seconds, dropping to the floor, gently placing a hand on his side. Hey, shh, buddy. It's okay. You're safe now." He jolted awake, eyes wide and wild. For a moment, I wasn't sure he recognized me. His breath came in fast gasps, like he'd been running for miles. I sat there, still as I could be, hand resting on his trembling body. He didn't pull away. He leaned in, pressed his face into my wrist, and let out a long, exhausted sigh. It was terrifying to see how deep his wounds went. Not the leg, not the frostbite, but the invisible scars. The kind no vet could fix. I lay down on the floor next to him, blanket wrapped around us both, and stayed there all night. Because honestly, I was scared for him. Scared that his little heart might break under the weight of what he'd been through. Scared that no matter how much warmth we gave him, he might never feel safe enough to stop running inside his own mind. He dozed in and out of sleep, flinching every time a floorboard creaked or the heater kicked on. And every time I whispered the same thing. "You're not alone anymore, Leif. I've got you now." By dawn, his breathing had slowed. His body finally relaxed against mine. And I think for the first time, he started to believe me. The next morning, the house was quiet, but the air felt heavy. I brought out a small bowl of soft food, warm and gentle on the stomach, and set it down in front of Leif. He sniffed once, then pulled back immediately, eyes darting to the side. His body stiffened like I'd placed a trap instead of a meal. "Come on, buddy," I whispered. "It's just food. You need this." But he wouldn't move. He sat there trembling, eyes locked on the bowl like it was something dangerous. I noticed his chest rising fast, shallow breaths, almost like panic. My stomach sank. Had he been starved? Had someone punished him near food? The thought made me sick. He looked at me then, and the message in his eyes was unbearable. "Don't make me." My wife put a hand on my shoulder. "Give him time." Time. I hated that word. Time felt like something he didn't have enough of. Every minute he stayed scared was another reminder of what people had done to him. That's when Jacob padded into the kitchen, still in his socks. He crouched down slowly, keeping his voice soft. "It's okay, Leif," he said, the way only an 8-year-old can. "I get scared sometimes too." Leif's ears flicked. His body didn't move, but his eyes shifted toward my son. Jacob inched closer, then stopped. He held out his small hand, palm open, just like I had on that frozen sidewalk. My heart thudded. This was too much. Too soon. I wanted to stop him, to protect both of them from disappointment. But Jacob whispered again, "I'm not going to hurt you." For a long moment, nothing, just silence, the ticking of the kitchen clock, Leif's shallow breaths. Then, barely, he leaned forward. One hesitant step. His paw slid across the floor, trembling. Another step. My throat tightened. And then, almost unbelievably, Leif pressed his nose against Jacob's hand. Just a touch, quick, fleeting, but real. Jacob's eyes lit up like Christmas. "Dad," he whispered without moving. "He trusts me." I had to blink hard to keep my own eyes clear. Because right there in my kitchen in Chicago, I saw it. A German Shepherd puppy who had been thrown away by the world, beginning to take his very first step back toward love. And I knew. We were witnessing a miracle in slow motion. That evening, the air in the house felt different, charged, like we were all holding our breath. Leif had taken a step toward Jacob that morning, but I knew trust wasn't built in a single moment. It was fragile, like glass, and could shatter if pushed too hard. Still, something had shifted. A door had cracked open. After dinner, Jacob brought out a small red ball from his toy box. He knelt a few feet from Leif, who was curled on the blanket near the fireplace. The puppy's ears perked, eyes following the ball as Jacob rolled it gently across the floor. It stopped right in front of Leif's paws. For a second, nothing. Just that stillness again, the tension of waiting. Then, slowly, Leif lifted his paw and nudged the ball. Not hard, not playful, just enough to make it wobble. Jacob gasped softly, covering his mouth like he just witnessed something sacred. "Dad, he played with me." My wife's hand slipped into mine. I felt her fingers squeeze. My chest swelled so tight it hurt. Jacob rolled the ball again, this time a little farther. Leif hesitated, ears flicking, then shuffled forward. His limp made my heart ache, but he didn't stop. He touched the ball again, then looked up at Jacob as if to say, "Was that right?" Jacob's smile was pure sunlight. "Good boy, Leif, you're safe now." And then it happened. For the first time since I'd found him shivering on that frozen sidewalk, Leif's tail moved. Just a twitch at first, uncertain, then a small wag. Quick, nervous, but undeniably a wag. My eyes burned, my throat tightened. I crouched down beside him, running a hand gently over his back. "That's it, buddy," I whispered. "That's what home feels like." Leif leaned against me, eyes softening, tail wagging again. For a moment, the fear melted. The walls he'd built inside himself cracked just enough to let the light in. And in that simple act, a paw nudging a toy, a tail daring to wag, he showed us he was ready to fight his way back to life. The German Shepherd puppy who had once been left for dead was choosing to live, and we were choosing to live it with him. The days that followed felt like watching winter turn into spring right inside our home. Leif still had his shadows, moments when a sudden noise would make him flinch, or when he curled into himself at bedtime as if bracing for the cold. But each day those shadows grew smaller, chased back by warmth, by patience, by love. Jacob became his anchor. Every morning before school, he'd sit beside Leif, whispering secrets into his ear like they were old friends. And Leif listened. He tilted his head, those soulful eyes locked on my boy, soaking in every word as if language itself could heal him. At the vet checkup a week later, the doctor smiled. "His leg is healing well. He'll have a limp for a little while, but he's strong. You've done wonders for him." I looked down at Leif, resting his head on my shoe, his eyes half closed in peace. "No," I said softly. "He's the one doing wonders for us." Back at home, I watched my wife laugh as Leif chased Jacob clumsily around the living room, his paws skidding on the hardwood, his tail wagging wildly now, unafraid to show joy. The sound of his bark, sharp, playful, alive, echoed off the walls. It was the sound of life reclaimed. That night, as he curled up on the blanket at the foot of our bed, he didn't whimper. He didn't thrash. He didn't cry. He just sighed, a deep, contented breath, and drifted into sleep. And I knew. He wasn't going to the shelter. He wasn't temporary. He was ours. Forever. The German Shepherd puppy I had found trembling on a frozen sidewalk in Chicago now had a name, a family, and a future. And as I lay there in the dark, listening to his steady breathing, I realized something. Saving him hadn't just given him a second chance. It had given us one too. Now, 3 weeks later, I can hardly believe this is the same German Shepherd puppy I found trembling on the frozen Chicago sidewalk. The tiny, broken animal who once stared at me with tear-stained eyes is now racing across the yard with Jacob, his tail high, his bark full of life. The limp is still there, a reminder of what he survived, but it doesn't slow him down. If anything, it makes every step look like triumph. Sometimes I stand at the window and watch him play, and I can still see the ghost of that first day, his small body curled against the wall, teeth chattering so loud it broke my heart. I think of all the people who passed him by, who didn't stop. And then I look at him now, eyes bright, fur shining, ears perked as he chases a ball. And I realize what a miracle love can create. Leif is more than a puppy. He is living proof that no life is too small to save. Every rescued dog, every abandoned puppy, every animal left in the cold deserves a second chance. And when we give them that chance, they don't just survive, they give back 1,000 times more. He curls up beside Jacob at night now, no longer crying, no longer haunted by the cold. He rests his head on my son's chest, trusting, safe. And when I reach down to stroke his fur, he looks at me like he knows. Knows he's home, knows he's loved, knows he was never disposable. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Without people willing to care, to foster, to step up, dogs like Leif would never see tomorrow. And it's true. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. It's the promise that once you take their paw, you never let it go. So if Leif's story touched your heart, please share it. Because the more people see stories like his, the more abandoned German Shepherd puppies, the more dogs, the more animals of every kind will get their second chance. Join our Brave Paws family. Be their voice. Be their hope.